Hello and welcome to Tax Matters. Chamaka Ohauchi. We are so excited as we have two prominent guests in the house. You know, in the matter of national development, running of government, running of business, taxation takes center stage. Whether it is mines and power, transportation, aviation, or telecommunications, tax is the subject matter. On Sunday, the 13th of March 2022, Tax Matters was on the entourage of His Excellency Rotimi Amaechi, the Honorable Federal Minister of Transportation, on a tour of Lekki Port Free Trade Zone in Ibeju-Lekki, Lagos. We tell you it is a massive thing going on there, just like what is going on in the railway sector. And we wondered, what is the role of taxes in all that is going on in the transportation sector? Trust us, we quickly got the minister to sit down for a chat. Honorable Minister, sir, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
We just took a tour of Lekki Port Free Trade Zone area and we saw the massive project that is going on there. And also we've seen other massive projects that have been carried out by the Muhammad Buhari administration. Now, we'd like to know, what is the major source or the major sources for these projects being carried out by the Muhammad Buhari administration?
Okay, well, one of the seaports is a PPP. An investor is funding the project. We are contributing land for which he has between 35 or so years to manage it and recover his money and they hand over to railway is partly loan and partly budget funding. So taxpayers' money is what we use in funding part of our contributions to railways.
That's impressive. Now I'd like to know, with regards to the railways, what is the role of taxation?
There are two roles it plays that are simultaneous. The first is that the loan has a component that allows us to contribute 15% of the project cost. So we'll have to contribute 15% of the project cost. So take the Lagos, the Kano, Kaduna. We've paid about nearly $300 million from the budget. That's the taxpayers' money, which constitutes the 15% of the loan. Then at the end of construction, when the loan is due, we also have to pay back the loan. Again, that will come from the taxpayers' money.
On the impact that the various projects will have on the lives of Nigerians.
Again, I won't talk about the seaport, since I told the seaport is an investment by the investors from China. But I can then talk about the railway. I'm sure you listen to radio, to TV and all that, and see how much passengers they move from Lagos to Ibadan on a daily basis. That's enough to impact on the economy and the cargo it carries. We've just brought in some wagons that will help move both liquid and dry cargoes from Lagos to Ibadan. Similarly, the same transportation is provided for those who use Warri to Itabe to help also grow the economy in this area. At the same time, we're doing the same in the Kaduna, Abuja. And we're constructing the Kano Kaduna. At the end of the construction of Kano Kaduna, you will see that most people who now live in Abuja will move to Kano, just like a lot of them have moved to Kaduna. Now, a friend of mine was telling me about the huge economic impact on the Ibadan city. People who ordinarily used to live in Lagos have moved backwards. So it's known that at 6 a.m. they can take a train to Lagos, and 6 p.m. they can take a train back.
On plans in the pipeline.
When we complete Kano Kaduna, it will enhance the volume of trade in the Kaduna Abuja. We'll commence by next month the construction of Port Harcourt Maiduguri. Then you'll see the difference.
On how to get Nigerians to voluntarily pay taxes.
The problem you have is trust. It's a trust issue. The previous governments have not delivered on taxes. So you collect taxes, you don't see the equivalent utilization of the tax money. Now, what the Muhammad Buhari government has done is to provide for you an evidence of utilization of the funds. So I'm sure that when we start the Port Harcourt Maiduguri, you could have said, and the Lagos Calabar, we could have said that we've covered all parts of Nigeria. The various ethnic groups in Nigeria would have been covered. So everybody feels that, okay, so if I'm paying tax here, I can join the railways from Lagos to Ibadan. Now, don't forget, we'll see construct from Ibadan to Kano. So when people like us who fear to fly during the rainy season, you can just board train at 6 a.m. and by 1, 2, you're in Abuja. Or 3, 4, 5, you're in Kano. Cargoes from the seaport can be transported to Kano. It reduced the cost of logistics greatly. So, and the time, the remaining time, for instance, it took us 14 days to move a locomotive from Lagos to Abuja. If the train was working, you arrive at Abuja in less than 8 hours. So out of 14 days, you've saved 13 days and some extra hours. Imagine the kind of investment of time you will use and how much benefits will accrue to you if you have 13 days that you will have used to do it. Even if you don't do it, if you sleep, Chiamaka, you wake up looking very healthy.
And this part in short.
Nobody wants to part with his money. But it's obligatory that we all have to pay our taxes. I pay my taxes. So what I can tell Nigerians is that they should pay their taxes as appropriately measured by Federal Inland Revenue Service. And then to say to them, they should learn to begin to trust some of us who are in government that we will deliver. I'm sure that once we can deliver on our promises, some will be willing to pay their taxes. You know, I find it funny when I'm driving on the road and I see this local government chairman with sticks and waiting to collect their taxes. And I say, oh, for Christ's sake, what kind of country are we where we have to pay taxes at gunpoint? Again, the government agencies must learn to encourage people to go to the banks and pay their taxes and not to go and wait for them on the road. That would be my advice.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Taxpayers' money in action.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations, kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
The program is Tax Matters. Last episode, we had a feature on filing and paying for value-added tax on Tax Pro Max, taking along with it trending issues around value-added tax. What are these trending issues, you may ask? One is the decision of the National Assembly to place value-added tax on the concurrent list in the ongoing effort to amend the 1999 Constitution. The other is the consequent debate by the organized private sector on the desirability or otherwise of the decision of the National Assembly. We also did tell you that we had a 6-month-old interview with Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PwC, which we kept on hold because of the court cases, but which nevertheless we decided to share with you on that episode. We begin today from where we stopped last episode.
Let's go taxing. Hand in hand, cheerfully. We go taxing as birds of a feather that flock around to make a living. With our signals drawn on the field, we go to pay our taxes cheerfully, knowing that our lives come to naught without us taxing together, to build our homestead, to mend our lives anew, to make our lives whole. Let's go taxing, hand in hand cheerfully, drawing our strength like a broom that breaks knots, for taxing together makes us wholesome.
Do you provide goods and services? Then you must answer these important questions. Are you registered for VAT? Do you charge VAT on the goods and services you provide? Do you keep records of all your transactions? Do you file VAT returns? Do you remit VAT collected to government coffers? If your answer to any of these questions is no, then you are breaking the law. The law demands total compliance. Therefore, you must register for VAT. You must charge VAT on goods and services. You must file VAT returns. And you must remit all VAT collected on behalf of government within 21 days to the bank nearest to you. To do otherwise is a crime punishable everywhere in the world. VAT is prescribed by the law. Do the right thing. Collect and pay VAT. This message is from the FIRS. It pays to pay your tax.
Mr. Oyedele, welcome once again.
My pleasure.
Now, sir, beyond the debate about who has the power to collect VAT, now I would like to know what are the relative advantages of VAT over other forms of taxes like sales tax and personal income tax.
I think the major advantage you have with a VAT system, first compared to personal income taxes, anything to do with income taxes is difficult. The reason why it's difficult is because people want to hide their income. So if you work in a formal employment, they pay your salary, you don't have a choice. Most employers will deduct your PAY and pay it to government. But if you are working for yourself and you earn income, it's difficult to just go and volunteer and declare everything. So what tends to happen with personal income tax is people try and hide, and then they don't disclose everything. In fact, there are people who are even they have employment and they will agree, okay, so let's have my employment contract for tax purposes. Let's put it there, it's 50K you are paying me. The real employment letter that you use to credit my bank account can be 300,000 naira a month. So people manipulate it. So to that extent, it's difficult. And so getting the full amount of tax is difficult. Whereas VAT is a consumption tax, you cannot hide your consumption, because consumption is something that either you are doing it through a payment system, or one way or the other, unless it's very tiny consumption. If anything that is material, then government will be aware of it. So to that extent, relatively, VAT is easier to collect. Not that it's easier to administer, but it's easier to collect than personal income tax. And if you compare it to sales tax, it has a cascading effect. So what that means is, if you buy a mobile phone now and there's sales tax, you pay sales tax on it, you sell it to me, I'll pay sales tax on it, I sell it to my friend will pay, so everybody keeps paying each time you pass it across. By the time it gets to the final person, you may be paying twice or double the amount of the price. So it's not good for the people because of that cascading effect. So VAT addresses that problem because it allows you to reclaim back every time that you pass the good on, you reclaim back all the VAT that you have paid, such that the only person who bears the consequence of the VAT is the final consumer. I think the fundamental difference is the impact of the tax. So if you think about a state trying to administer consumption tax, it's going to be extremely complicated for a state to deal with transactions coming from other states. So like now we learned from the Lagos State law, VAT law, that is likely 5 or 6%. Rivers State is 7.5%, the national VAT is 7.5%. So if I buy something either imported, I'll pay 7.5%. If I buy it from Kano, I'll pay 7.5%. I then take it to Lagos, and Lagos says, sell it and charge 6 or 5%. What's going to happen is, I want to claim my input VAT back. If my margin is not very high, so Lagos State will end up having to pay me a refund. I've been in tax practice now for more than 20 years. I've never received any refund from any state tax authority. So I doubt that it's going to change by tomorrow, right? So those challenges are there that make it very difficult for you to administer VAT at state level. What you could do is to administer sales tax. But now the problem with sales tax is that it has a cascading effect. So that's the reason why, in 1986, we had a military decree for states to implement sales tax. But when the conversation of VAT came up, it was considered to be a better tax, more progressive. So it was then used to replace sales tax. But it was also admitted that this VAT is better implemented centrally. So it seems now, unfortunately, that the questions we're asking ourselves in 2021 were the questions we had answered in 1993, with the hindsight of what we implemented since 1986. That's the sales tax. And then in 1993, we said VAT was better, but it has to be administered centrally. Unfortunately, I think the law wasn't, particularly the constitution wasn't amended to reflect what was the agreement at the time.
Still on this VAT, now if VAT collection goes to the state, what really would the federal government be losing?
That's an interesting question. I think federal government will not lose anything. Federal government would actually gain. So as of 2020, FRS collected 1.53 trillion naira in VAT. And about 51% of that amount was VAT collected from imports and from international services. And the FCT collected about 202 billion, so which is mostly government contracts and the activities within the FCT. So if we put it together, federal government collected about 60% of VAT. But federal government, based on the provisions of the VAT law, is entitled only to 15%. 85% is given to state and local government. So if this position of Rivers State is sustained all the way to the Supreme Court, and then states start collecting VAT or sales tax or whatever name they call it, it will mean that the federal government will have the right to enact a law. They can call it any other name to continue to collect consumption tax on imports, on international services, and within the FCT. They can either keep that, which means they get about 4 times what they are getting now, or they could put it into the federation account and share it with state, local government, right? If they did that, they would take about 52%, which is still more than twice what they collect now. So no matter how you dice and share it, federal government will benefit from this analysis. So, which is why I've been saying to people, this is not a fight between state and federal government. So let's situate it very well, because a lot of Nigerians who are supporting state, they think they are supporting state to win a battle with federal government. It's not a battle with the federal government. It's more a question about equitable distribution among states, so it's state versus state. And then more importantly, from my point of view, based on what I have seen so far, it's also a conversation between governments at state level and the people. Because if you end up with a format of VAT administration that increases the burden on small businesses, that increases the burden on individuals, especially poor and vulnerable people, then the losers at the end of the day will be the people.
I would like you to give us the formula used to distribute the shares of states and local governments VAT in terms of the percentage that is allocated to derivation, to equality of states and population.
Yes. So on one hand, VAT revenue is shared 15% to the federal government, 50% to the states, and then 35% to local governments. Now, for the sharing to states and local governments, you use 50% of the amount you're sharing is on equality. Just divide by the number of states, right? Everybody gets the same amount. 30% is based on population. So the more populous your state is, the more VAT revenue you collect. And then the last one is derivation. Derivation is 20%, which means the more VAT we collect from within your state, the more you will share. So put all of this together, that's how VAT revenue is shared at the moment with states and then with local government.
Looking at this allocation, do you think the percentage that is being allocated to the state and the local government based on these 3 items, if it is really fair?
No, I don't think it's fair. Because when you say equality, just share equally, everybody. So whether you lifted a finger or not, you collect the same thing as me, up to half of the amount that we have to share. So that for me is not equitable. if I have my ways, I'll say that what we need to do is for FRS to provide data about where VAT is being derived from, because the data we have today is not that very reliable, in the sense that if you are MTN or you are Zenith Bank, or you are Dangote Cement, and you are headquartered in Lagos, you just file all your returns and submit it to FRS in Lagos. There's no breakdown that shows how much calls were made in Kano, in Ekiti, in Osun, in Enugu. So we then attribute everything to Lagos State, and Lagos State, actually, I'm the one contributing 55% of the VAT. So we have to find a way to track what is being derived from each state, and then use that derivation to share whatever we're sharing across. So it's reflective of what you would have collected if you had your own state VAT law. So I think that's what will be fair. And we already have a model for that. That's the exact model we have in the Constitution for stamp duties, right? So we can adopt the same thing for VAT, and all these agitation about let's collect our own consumption tax, hopefully will then disappear.
Now, finally, before we let you go, sir, now, let's see, if the case now goes the way of the states, now what will now happen to small businesses? I mean, those with turnover less than 25 million naira that are exempted from collecting by the Finance Act, and also the extensive list of VAT exempt items under the Finance Act 2019.
Yeah, so many Nigerians don't fully understand what this means for them. So for your question, I think we'll address it. So there's nothing that says that states cannot collect VAT and then provide exemptions to small businesses and, extensive list of exempt items. But unfortunately, that's not what they have done. The laws we've seen in Rivers State and Lagos State have replicated in 1993 almost the very first version of the VAT law, and all of the things that we have fought for to get in terms of let's have a threshold for small business because they don't have the capacity to understand VAT. And by the way, the amount you collect from them is insignificant. You may be spending more money to collect than the revenue you are collecting from them. I think the IMF, International Monetary Fund, conducted a review of the FRS in around 2018 or 2019, and they concluded that 97% of VAT revenue came from just 3% of the taxpayers. So we had now moved to a point where if your turnover in a year was less than 25 million, you didn't need to bother about VAT. You can just go on with your life. And then we have an extensive list of exempt items. Over 500 food items are exempted from VAT. Right? So what's going to happen once states are the ones to collect VAT based on what we have seen so far? They don't have an exemption for small businesses. Their exemption list of items that are exempted from VAT is very limited. In other words, if you buy amala with ewedu, or you buy ogbono with, even in the north, maybe you buy suya, you will start paying VAT on it. The suya seller by the roadside, your hairdresser, the barber, your tailor, your plumber, all of them must register for VAT and charge you VAT. The law says, like the one in Lagos State, that even if they fail to register or they fail to keep proper record, they'll pay penalty of up to 250,000 naira. If they don't register the first month, they pay 50,000 naira penalty. Every other month, they pay like 100,000. Where are they going to find those kind of money? Many of these people we're looking at can't even spell VAT correctly. They can't keep record to save their own lives. How much less keeping record to be able to file VAT? So the implication is that it will impact, and I worry that many of the states they have not professionalized their tax authorities. So what they will see is instead of them becoming creative, they become desperate and aggressive. They can then employ touts to go around. They'll carry your wares and say you have not registered for VAT. You now start chasing them on top of VAT matter. Even downfall drivers, Okada riders, all of these people have to register for VAT. So all of the people that are sharing on now say, hey, let state collect. They will know what it means if eventually states win these case to collect. The other aspect also is, if everybody start collecting their VAT, right, you're going to find states that produce a lot of food. Food items are exempted from VAT. So, but if the only thing I produce in my state is food, and I don't have VAT to collect, I'll say, go to hell with your exemption. I'll start imposing VAT on tomato, on onions, and everybody, the cost of food will just go up, because that's the only thing that the state can rely on. They have to collect VAT on it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. It's really a great pleasure talking with you, and really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure to be on the program.
We have enjoyed this interview, and we hope you did. Please carry that into your week. In other words, enjoy yourself. Thank you for watching.